The massive Imperial scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its golden hull gleamed in the distant sunlight as it moved past Neptune's orbit. Inside the ship, Captain Wells of the Imperial Scout Fleet looked at the blue planet with satisfaction. Another primitive world to add to the Empire's collection. "My lord, we're detecting thousands of artificial satellites and multiple orbital stations," reported his sensor officer. "They appear to have achieved basic space travel." Wells smiled. This would be even easier than expected. A civilization just reaching for the stars would be too afraid to resist the might of the Galactic Empire. They had done this hundreds of times before. "Send the standard greeting," he ordered. "Inform them of their new status as subjects of the Empire." In his office aboard the Orbital Defense Station Alpha, Admiral Reed was enjoying his morning coffee when the alert came through. The massive alien ship had triggered every early warning system they had placed beyond Neptune's orbit. But Reed didn't rush. He didn't panic. Instead, he took another sip of his coffee and pressed a button on his desk. "Begin Operation Sleeping Giant," he said calmly. Across Earth, hidden facilities rumbled to life. In underground bases, advanced weapon systems powered up. In orbital shipyards concealed behind holographic shields, Earth's true fleet began to awaken. 100 years of preparation were about to pay off. The Imperial message arrived exactly as their intelligence had predicted it would. Reed had studied countless reports from Earth's deep space monitoring posts that had been watching the Empire's expansion for decades. The translation software decoded it instantly. "Greetings, primitive species. You are now part of the Galactic Empire. Resist and face destruction. Submit and receive the Empire's protection. You have one planetary rotation to respond." Reed looked out his window at Earth below. It looked peaceful from up here. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. The Empire probably thought they were looking at the same thing, a helpless world ripe for conquest. They couldn't see the planetary shield grid. They couldn't detect the quantum defense arrays. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and asked, "What if we're not alone?" "Send our response," Reed ordered. In his command chair, Captain Wells waited confidently for the primitive world's surrender. They always surrendered. In 10,000 years, no species had dared to challenge the Empire's first contact protocol. The response came through in perfect Imperial Standard language. "Request diplomatic meeting. We'll send ambassador within 6 hours." Wells laughed. They were so eager to submit that they had already learned the Empire's language. This would be the easiest conquest yet. 6 hours later, a small Earth shuttle approached the Imperial ship. Wells noticed it was surprisingly advanced for a primitive species, but dismissed the thought. Many worlds could build basic spacecraft. It meant nothing. The shuttle docked with practiced ease. The airlock cycled, and a single human stepped aboard. He wore a simple black suit and carried no weapons. His name was Thomas Walker, Earth's chosen ambassador. "Welcome aboard," Wells said through the translation system. "Are you authorized to sign your world's surrender?" Walker smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or a fearful one. It was the kind of smile a parent might give to a child who had just said something naive. "Actually," Walker said in perfect Imperial Standard, without using a translator, "I'm here to give you a warning." Wells blinked in surprise. They could speak his language fluently. How was that possible? A warning? Wells laughed, but something felt off. This wasn't going according to protocol at all. "What could you possibly warn us about?" "We've been watching your empire expand for 50 years, Walker said calmly. "We've studied your technology, your tactics, your culture. We know everything about you, but you know nothing about us." He paused, his expression growing serious. "So let me tell you something about humans. In our entire history, we have never gone a single century without war. We've fought ourselves so many times that we've become masters of combat, strategy, and defensive technology. And now, for the first time in 100 years, we are completely united. Walker leaned forward slightly. So here's your warning, Captain. Run. Run back to your empire. Tell them to stay away from Earth, because if you don't... He smiled again, but this time there was steel behind it. Well, you really don't want to find out what happens next. The Imperial High Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Walker entered. The room was massive, with tall crystal columns reaching up into darkness. 12 alien counselors sat on raised platforms, looking down at him. They had expected him to be impressed, afraid, or at least nervous. Instead, he walked to the center of the room like he belonged there. You dare threaten an Imperial captain? The head counselor's voice boomed through the chamber. Your species must have a death wish. Walker pulled out a small device from his pocket. The Imperial guards raised their weapons, but he just pressed a button. A hologram appeared, filling the entire chamber with images from Earth's history. Let me show you something, Walker said calmly. This is World War I. The hologram showed trenches, tanks, and planes. We fought this war over 100 years ago. 8 million people died. He pressed another button. World War II. New images appeared. Bigger tanks, faster planes, massive ships. Just 30 years after the First War. 50 million dead. The council watched in silence as Walker showed them war after war, battle after battle. He showed them how humans had gone from fighting with swords to splitting atoms in less than 200 years. Every war made us stronger, Walker explained. Every conflict taught us something new. While your empire was conquering peaceful worlds, we were learning how to fight better, smarter, and harder than anyone else. One of the counselors leaned forward. Are you saying your primitive world could stand against the Imperial fleet? Walker smiled. We already have. He pressed another button, showing them Captain Wells's scout ship. Your advanced sensors didn't detect our real fleet. Your scans didn't find our defense systems. You didn't even notice that we've been watching your empire for decades. The head counselor stood up, his face dark with anger. You speak boldly for someone whose world could be destroyed with a single order. Try it, Walker said quietly. The whole room grew colder at his words. Send your ships, all of them. But first, let me tell you what will happen. He pressed one final button. The hologram showed Earth's true defenses. Quantum shield arrays hidden in asteroid belts, stealth fleets powered by dark matter engines, and weapon systems that could tear apart space itself. We've had 100 years of peace to prepare, Walker continued. 100 years of scientific advancement focused on one goal, making sure that when we met aliens like you, we would be ready. Your empire has never lost a war because you've never fought one. You've only had conquests. But humans... He looked each council member in the eye. War is in our blood. Peace is our choice. And right now, you're threatening that peace. The council chamber erupted in angry shouts, but Walker raised his hand. I'm not finished. We don't want war. We've had enough of those, so I'm here to offer you a choice. He pulled out a data crystal and placed it on the floor. This contains two things. First, a star map showing the borders of human space. Stay out of it, and we'll stay out of yours. Second, a trade proposal. Your empire has plenty to offer us, and we have plenty to offer you. We can be valuable allies or your worst nightmare. The choice is yours. Walker turned to leave, then stopped. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose carefully. Because if you choose war... He gestured to the hologram still showing Earth's defenses. Well, let's just say that humans don't fight to conquer. We fight to win. And we're very, very good at winning. As Walker left the chamber, the council sat in stunned silence. For the first time in 10,000 years, they faced a species that didn't fear them. Worse, they faced a species that knew how to fight. The head counselor picked up the data crystal with trembling hands. They had 48 hours to decide the fate of the empire. And somehow, He knew that humanity already knew what choice they would make. The Imperial fleet moved through space like a swarm of golden wasps. 100 warships, each big enough to hold a small city, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. On the bridge of the lead ship, Fleet Commander Davis of the Imperial forces smiled coldly. He had convinced the Council that a show of force would make these humans understand their true place in the galaxy. "Status report," Davis commanded. "All ships in formation, sir." "No sign of these supposed human defenses," his second-in-command reported. "Their warning appears to have been nothing but empty words." In her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Jane Miller watched the Imperial fleet's approach on a massive holographic display. Around her, human operators sat calmly at their stations, monitoring defense systems that had waited a century to be used. "They really brought only 100 ships," Miller said, shaking her head. "They actually thought this would scare us." She pressed a button on her command chair. "All stations, prepare to execute Operation Checkmate. Remember, non-lethal measures only. We're here to teach them a lesson, not start a war." The Imperial fleet passed Mars, their sensors detecting nothing unusual. Commander Davis stood proudly on his bridge, imagining how these humans would react when they saw real power. His ships could level entire continents. Surely now they would understand the futility of resistance. "Sir," his sensor officer called out suddenly, "I'm detecting some kind of energy spike from." The officer never finished his sentence. A wave of invisible energy washed over the fleet. Every ship's engines suddenly died. Artificial gravity failed. Communications went dark. Only life support and basic power remained. "What's happening?" Davis demanded, floating in the zero gravity of his now powerless bridge. "Get our systems back online." "Impossible, sir," his engineer reported. "Something's disrupted all our quantum field generators. We're dead in space." Miller watched with satisfaction as the mighty Imperial fleet drifted helplessly. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "Begin Phase 2. Suddenly, the space around the Imperial ships lit up. Hundreds of human vessels shimmered into view, dropping their stealth fields. They were smaller than the Imperial ships, but sleeker, more advanced. They moved with a grace that showed centuries of space combat evolution. "This is Commander Jane Miller of the Earth Defense Force." Her voice transmitted to every Imperial ship. "Your ships have been disabled by our quantum disruption field. Don't worry. The effect is temporary. We just wanted to have a proper conversation." Davis felt cold sweat on his forehead as he watched the human ships surround his fleet. Their technology was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. How had they hidden such power? "As you can see," Miller continued, "we could have destroyed your entire fleet. Instead, we chose to disable it. This is your final warning. Earth is not some helpless world for you to conquer. We are not primitive, and we are not afraid." Small drones launched from the human ships, attaching themselves to each Imperial vessel. Within minutes, power returned to the Imperial fleet, but their weapons remained offline. "We've installed governor devices on your ships," Miller explained. "They'll let you return home safely, but you won't be able to fire a single shot until you're back in Imperial space. Consider this a demonstration of human mercy and human power." The human ships began to disappear again, their stealth fields re-engaging. Soon, only Miller's command ship remained visible. "When you return to your council," she said, "tell them this. The next fleet they send won't be turned away so gently. Earth has chosen peace for 100 years. Don't make us remember how to choose war." As the Imperial fleet limped home in shame, Davis understood the terrible truth. They had made a mistake that no one in the Empire's 10,000-year history had ever made before. They had underestimated their opponent. And somehow, he knew that the Empire would pay dearly for that mistake. The Imperial High Council watched in horror as the battle recordings played before them. Their mighty fleet, reduced to floating helplessly in space by weapons they couldn't even understand. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came next. "My lords," the intelligence officer said, his voice shaking. "We've discovered that the humans weren't even trying. They have so much more." The display changed, showing hidden camera footage from Earth's orbit. Massive shipyards stretched for miles, concealed behind advanced holographic technology. Quantum computers that could process more data in a second than the Empire's best machines could handle in a year. Weapons that could bend gravity itself. How? The head counselor demanded. How did they build all this without us knowing? In the United Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Reed smiled as he read the reports. The Empire's spy satellites were exactly where they had expected them to be. Everything they were seeing was exactly what Earth wanted them to see. "Send in the package," Reed ordered. Deep in Imperial space, on their most secure military base, alarms suddenly blared. A small object had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of their highest security vault. It was a simple metal box with Earth's flag on it. The Empire's best scientists gathered around it, scanning it with their most advanced equipment. They found nothing dangerous, just a simple data storage device. When they activated it, a hologram appeared. It showed rows upon rows of weapons and ships that made their previous glimpse of Earth's power look like children's toys. "Consider this a courtesy," the hologram said in Admiral Reed's voice. "What you saw before was our first line of defense. This is our second. There are 5 more levels after this, each one worse than the last. Would you like to see them all?" The head counselor received the report with trembling hands. Not only had humans defeated their fleet without firing a shot, but they had also breached the Empire's most secure facility like it was nothing. "Sir," a guard burst into the council chamber. "We're getting reports from across Imperial space. The humans, they're everywhere. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000 secure locations, similar metal boxes appeared simultaneously. Each one showed the same message, the same warning, the same display of power. Earth wasn't just strong. It was overwhelmingly, unimaginably powerful." In his office, Admiral Reed opened a communication channel to the Imperial capital. The head counselor's face appeared, no longer proud but deeply worried. "Now you begin to understand," Reed said calmly. "We could have destroyed your fleet. We could have taken your worlds. We could have ended your empire before you knew what hit you. But we didn't, because unlike you, we know the true cost of war." "What do you want?" the head counselor asked quietly. "The same thing we've always wanted. Peace. Real peace. Not your version of peace through dominance. We want trade, cultural exchange, mutual respect. We want to be partners, not rulers or subjects." The display changed, showing Earth's full defensive grid. Quantum shields that could absorb the energy of a supernova. Ships that could outmaneuver light itself. AI systems that had solved problems the Empire's scientists hadn't even discovered yet. "This is who we are," Reed continued. "A species that spent its entire history learning to fight, only to choose peace. A civilization that built the ultimate weapons, only to use them as shields, not swords. You tried to conquer us because you didn't understand us. Now you do." He leaned forward, his expression serious but not unkind. "So, what's it going to be? Partnership or isolation? Because let me be clear, those are your only options. The era of imperial conquest is over. The only question is whether you want to move forward with us or be left behind." The head counselor looked at the display of Earth's power one more time. For the first time in the Empire's history, they had not just met their match, they had found their superior. And somehow, that superior power was offering peace instead of dominance. The choice, he realized, had already been made for them. Panic spread through the Imperial capital like wildfire. The proud golden towers that had stood for 10,000 years suddenly felt less impressive. In the military command center, generals argued loudly over reports flooding in from across the galaxy. "They've been watching us for decades," one general shouted, throwing data tablets onto the central table. "Every military base, every shipyard, every secret installation. They know everything. Captain Robert Stone of the Earth Diplomatic Corps watched the chaos with calm interest. He had been invited to observe this emergency meeting. Though invited wasn't quite the right word. He had simply walked in, past all their security systems, and taken a seat. No one dared to stop him. "Would you like to know how we did it?" Stone asked quietly. The room fell silent. "Your encryption was impressive, but we broke it 50 years ago. Your stealth technology is good, but we saw through it 40 years ago. Your AI defenses are strong, but we bypassed them 30 years ago." He stood up and walked to the central display, pressing a few buttons. The screen lit up with thousands of tiny dots spread across the galaxy map. "These are your surveillance satellites," Stone explained. "And these," he pressed another button, showing thousands more dots in different colors, "are ours. We've been everywhere, watching everything. Not because we wanted to conquer you, but because we needed to know if you were a threat." The generals stared at the display in shock. Their entire intelligence network had been compromised for decades, and they hadn't even known it. "Impossible," one admiral protested. "Our systems would have detected." "Your systems," Stone laughed softly. "Your systems are based on quantum mechanics from 1,000 years ago. We moved past that level of technology before we even met you." He pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected a hologram showing Earth's technological progress over the past century. The Empire's scientists watched in amazement as humanity advanced from basic spaceflight to technology that bordered on the impossible. "While you were conquering peaceful worlds," Stone continued, "we were preparing for the worst. Every war in our history taught us something. Every conflict made us stronger. We built weapons that could tear apart reality itself, then locked them away because we understood their true cost." The room was silent now, every Imperial officer realizing just how badly they had underestimated humanity. "Do you know what's really frightening?" Stone asked, looking each person in the room in the eye. "Everything you've seen so far, our defense systems, our stealth technology, our quantum disruptors, that's all last-generation technology. The stuff we're comfortable letting you see." He pressed one final button on his device. The hologram changed, showing brief glimpses of machines and weapons that defied understanding. Things that shouldn't be possible. "This is what we have now," Stone said quietly. "Things we built not because we wanted to use them, but because we needed to be ready. Because humanity learned one lesson from all our wars. The best way to prevent conflict is to be so strong that no one dares to start one." An older general stood up slowly, his face pale. "Why are you showing us this?" "Because you need to understand something. Earth isn't just another world for you to conquer. We're not going to be part of your empire. We're offering you a chance to be our partners instead. But first, you need to understand exactly who and what you're dealing with." Stone walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely. Because if you choose wrong—" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well, everything you've seen so far has been us being nice. You really don't want to see us when we stop being nice." As the door closed behind him, the Imperial officers looked at each other in silence. For the first time in their lives, they felt true fear. Not of defeat. They had already been defeated. They feared something worse, becoming irrelevant in a galaxy where humanity had just changed all the rules. The Imperial Palace's Great Hall had never been so crowded. Representatives from every corner of the Empire packed the massive space, their worried whispers echoing off the crystal walls. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Walker, calm and composed as ever. "Your empire stands at a crossroads," Walker addressed the gathered crowd. "For 10,000 years, you've ruled through force. Today, that changes." The holographic displays around the hall activated, showing scenes from across Imperial space. On 100 worlds, Earth's warning boxes still sat in their most secure vaults. On 1,000 ships, the quantum governors remained active, a constant reminder of human power. Here is our proposal, Walker continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Equal diplomatic relations, fair trade agreements, cultural exchange, technology sharing, carefully monitored, of course. A new age of cooperation instead of conquest. And if we refuse, a voice called out from the crowd. Walker smiled. Then nothing happens. We don't attack. We don't invade. We simply leave you alone. No trade, no technology, no contact. You can keep your empire exactly as it is, slowly falling behind as the rest of the galaxy moves forward. The crowd erupted in angry shouts and heated arguments. In the chaos, Admiral Green of the Imperial Fleet made his way to the front. "I've seen their power firsthand," Green announced, silencing the room. "They disabled our best ships without firing a shot. They'd breached our strongest defenses like they weren't even there. And now," he paused, looking around the room, "now they offer us peace, partnership. We would be fools to refuse." But not everyone agreed. Lord Marcus, one of the Empire's most powerful nobles, stepped forward. "You expect us to bow to these humans?" he demanded. "To give up our rightful place as rulers of the galaxy?" "No one's asking you to bow," Walker replied calmly. "We're asking you to grow, to change, to become something better than conquerors." The debate raged for hours. Walker watched as the Empire's society began to split. The military, who had seen Earth's power firsthand, largely supported partnership. The merchants and traders saw the potential for profit in new human technologies. But the old nobility, those who had grown rich from conquest, resisted fiercely. Finally, a young noble named Lady Helen stepped forward. She was known for her brilliant mind and progressive ideas. "Look at what these humans have shown us," she said, her voice cutting through the arguments. "They built weapons that could destroy us all, then chose not to use them. They found our weaknesses, then offered to help us become stronger. They beat us without killing a single Imperial citizen." She turned to face the crowd. "This isn't surrender. This is evolution. For 10,000 years, we've stood still, thinking we were the peak of civilization. Today, we learned we're not. We can either adapt and grow, or we can fade into history." The mood in the room began to shift. Even Lord Marcus and his supporters fell silent as they realized the truth of her words. Walker watched it all with satisfaction. This was exactly what Earth had hoped for, not just a change in policy, but a change in thinking. The Empire was learning that there was more power in cooperation than in conquest. "The choice is yours," Walker said finally. "But remember this, Earth didn't become powerful by conquering others. We became powerful by learning from every challenge, adapting to every threat, and always preparing for the future. Now we're offering to help you do the same." He looked around the vast hall one last time. "So what's it going to be? Will you join us in building something new, or will you cling to the old ways and be left behind?" The answer came not in words, but in action. One by one, the representatives began to step forward, ready to vote for change. The Empire's 10,000 years of conquest were ending not with a bang, but with a realization. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning a war, but from choosing not to fight one. 1 year after the Empire's historic decision, Admiral Reed stood at the window of his office on the lunar base, watching ships move through space. But these weren't warships anymore. Massive trade vessels painted in both Earth and Imperial colors carried goods and knowledge between worlds. Tourist ships brought curious Imperial citizens to see Earth, while human explorers ventured out to study Imperial worlds. "Quite a change from last year," Ambassador Walker said, joining him at the window. "Remember when those ships were coming to conquer us?" Reed smiled. "Hard to believe it was only a year ago. How's the technology exchange program going?" "Better than expected," Walker replied, pulling up a holographic report. "We've started teaching them the basics of quantum shielding. In return, they're helping us improve our faster-than-light travel systems. Their hyperspace technology is actually quite impressive when it's not being used for war. A notification popped up on Reed's display. The Imperial High Council had just approved another joint research project. This time, they would work together to solve problems that affected all species: environmental protection, disease control, and space exploration. "You know what's funny?" Reed said, looking at the report. "We spent 100 years preparing for war, and instead we got the biggest peace initiative in human history." Through the window, they watched as a new type of ship emerged from the lunar shipyards. It was a hybrid design, Earth's advanced defense systems combined with Imperial hyperspace technology, the first of many collaborations between the former enemies. "The Empire's changing faster than anyone expected," Walker noted. "Last week, they turned 3 of their conquest fleets into scientific exploration missions. Lady Helen is leading the reform movement, and even Lord Marcus has started supporting the changes." "Fear is a powerful teacher," Reed replied, "but hope is an even better one." A group of Imperial students passed by the office window, heading to Earth's new Galactic Exchange University. They wore a mix of Imperial and human clothing styles, another small sign of how quickly things were changing. "Did you see the latest survey?" Walker asked. 90% of Imperial worlds support the new partnership. Turns out their people were tired of endless conquest too. They just needed someone to show them another way. Reed nodded, remembering the tense meetings from a year ago. "We showed them more than that. We showed them that true strength isn't about how many worlds you can conquer. It's about how many you can help." The holographic display updated again, showing news from across the galaxy. Imperial worlds were dismantling their conquest fleets, replacing them with trading ships and exploration vessels. The Empire's old motto of "submit or perish" was being replaced with "progress through partnership." "Commander Miller sent an interesting report," Walker said. "The quantum governors we installed on their ships. Most of their captains are asking to keep them, just modified for safety protocols instead of weapons control. They say it reminds them to think before they act." Reed laughed. A year ago, they would have rather died than admit humans made anything better than them. Now look. He gestured to the busy space lanes. Humans and Imperials working together, learning from each other, building something new. A small alert reminded them it was time for the weekly Joint Council meeting. Representatives from Earth and the Empire would meet to discuss new projects, solve problems, and plan for the future. "You know what the best part is," Walker said as they headed to the meeting room. "We didn't just prevent a war. We made something better than victory." Reed looked back one last time at the view of Earth and the ships peacefully orbiting it. "We made progress, and we did it without firing a single shot." He smiled. "Maybe that's the most human thing we could have done." As they walked into the meeting room, filled with both human and Imperial faces, Reed realized something important. Humanity had spent centuries learning the art of war, only to master something far more powerful: the art of peace. And in doing so, they hadn't just changed the Empire. They had changed the galaxy forever. The room quieted as Reed took his place at the table. Another day of building the future was about to begin. And this time, everyone would build it together.